welcome to the Marley Bird YouTube channel, brought to you by Red Heart Yarns. This is the very first video for the fall crochet along. I'm so glad all of you are here to join me in this big adventure. If you don't know very many details about the crochet along, I want to make sure that you check out the blog link right down there in the video description box below, because that will answer a lot of the questions you might have as far as how does this crochet along work? What yarn do I need? What size hook do I need? How are the patterns going to be revealed to me along the 6-week course? If a blog isn't your style, I've also done an introductory video that you can check out as well. I'll make sure I put a link to it right there, that little I button. You can click on that and you can watch the introduction video. So without further ado, I'm going to jump ahead here and we're going to start off with video 1, which is all about choosing the correct size and measurement for your beautiful cardigan. As you know, we are making a beautiful motif cardigan for this crochet along, and this might be the very first crochet garment many of you have made either for yourself or an adult size. My goal here is to walk you through making this crochet cardigan just as if you were taking a class with me. Having said that, some of these videos might run a little bit longer than a typical YouTube video, but I really want you to sit down and feel like you're taking a class one-on-one with me. This is the type of interaction you would get with me if we were at a class at Stitches or at Vogue Knitting or anywhere else that happens to hire me to come and teach people. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, as I'm giving you instructions and letting you go off to choose your size or work on a motif or join the motifs at different sections along the way, I want you to feel free to pause the video, work on that portion, and then come back and pick up where you left off. That's the best way to really approach all of this. As a matter of fact, if it were me, I'd watch the whole video first just to kind of get a grasp of what I'm doing, and then go back and take it section by section, so that way you can better work at your pace and have me there to hold your hand the best I can. So regarding sizing, you'll notice that there are 3 different sizes for this cardigan. There is a small medium, a large extra large, and a 2X 3X. Now, I really hate giving out those terms, the small to the 3X terms, because those are so wide ranging, correct? I mean, if you're like me, my 1X at Lane Bryant does not fit the same as a 1X from Banana Republic, right? It's all about the measurements of the clothing. So the first thing you need to learn is whenever you're stepping in to make a garment, the measurements, the actual measurements of the garment are more important than those labels of small, medium, large, extra large, 1X, 2X, 3X, blah, 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 right? Okay, so that's the first caveat here. So what I want to do now is I'm no longer going to refer to those as small or large or 1X or 2X. I'm going to call them the smallest size, the middle size, and the largest size, okay? Because we're going to talk about the measurements. Now, I have mentioned that the pattern is free and available over on marleybird.com. I'll put a link right in the video description box right down there below. When you get the pattern, let's go ahead and take a look at the schematic. As we're looking at the schematic for this piece, you'll see that it looks like just a big rectangle. And the first thing I want to point out is that this rectangle only represents the motifs of the pattern. This does not include the collar or the cuffs. That's really important because as we take a look at these measurements down here, we want to know when we get to the collar, does that mean that's going to be extra for us, or is it already included into those measurements? Because if we're right on the cusp of something, we really want to make sure it's going to fit us correctly. So we have 39 inches is the width of all of those motifs joined together, or the middle size is 46 inches, or the largest size is 53 inches. Now, I'm here to tell you those are large measurements, and these are not going to go by your bust size, which is different than most garments, right? Most garments, it'll say for the size 36-inch bust, you want to make this size. We are actually going to go by the fact that we want these garments to be able to go around our body and have extra room. Okay, we don't want them to just come around and just stop and fit us, right? Because they're meant to be oversized. Remember, if they just go around our body and they're exactly 36 inches, we have nowhere for our arms to go. We would look like a bunch of penguins walking around like this. We've got to have a little extra wiggle room to be able to have our arms move, because when we pinch together this fabric, we're creating an area for our arms to go in, and we want to make sure we have some movement there. That's where the extra ease comes in. Now that seems like a big word. Ease only means it's the measurement between your actual body measurement and the measurement of the sweater. So this sweater is meant to have a lot of positive ease, meaning it's supposed to be oversized. Later on in the video, I'm actually going to put on a sweater that is the 53-inch measurement. It's not this sweater, but it's the exact same measurement. So that way you out there can see what the largest size actually looks like on me, because I'm typically a 2X size. So I really want you to see that proportionately that size is the correct size for me, but maybe it's a little bit bigger than what you want and you would like to make the medium size. So I shouldn't say the medium size, the middle size. And that's going to be an option for you. So I will do that later on in the video. So just hold tight with that. So when we're looking at these numbers and you're trying to decide, okay, Marley, I'm a 48-inch bust, or I normally wear a 48-inch, what should I wear? Or what size should I make? You really kind of have to think to yourself, you know, how extra big do I want it to be? Because you have to remember the collar itself is 10 inches wide, and it's 10 inches wide on each side. So that's a full 20 inches we have going on the collar. Now, granted, the collar is supposed to be folded back, and then you can pinch it closed and maybe put a shawl pin in it or put a button on. Like, there's lots of options to do. But I want you to know, if you err on the side of making it a little bit smaller, you always have a lot of like safety margins with the collar, so you'll be okay. All right, hopefully that answers some of your questions. All right, so that actually is the summation of my sizing portion. If you're going to choose, not if, when you choose your size, remember that it is supposed to be oversized, and I will put on the largest size later on so that way you can see what the largest size looks like proportionately as far as the size to my size 2X body and my 53-inch bust. So I have a 53-inch bust, and you're going to see what the size looks like on me. It's large, but man, do I love that sweater. I wear it all the time at my desk because it's just comfy and cozy. But I want you to be able to choose and make the right size for you. Okay, so let's talk about how I actually got these measurements for my schematic. Take a look down here. As we take a look at the schematic we've been looking at all along, these measurements down here represent the width of the piece, meaning this is the width that will go around your body, okay? These measurements right here are the length of the piece. It's the length from this top to the bottom, and then when that gets folded together, those lengths obviously get adjusted. But this is what we want the ultimate length to be before seaming. Okay, so those are very important. When you do your gauge swatch, which is the next video, we're going to learn how to make the actual motif and do the measuring and make the gauge swatch before we jump into our actual swatch. You will begin to see that your squares need to be 3.5 inches by 3.5 inches. If you are off by even 1/4 of an inch, that will affect the entire length and entire width of your piece. So it is very, very, very important that you do a gauge swatch, okay? So that's gonna be my first note. The second thing is, as you look down here, you can see I kind of have a schematic without all the numbers and just a bunch of squares. You're like, what does this mean, Marley? So what I did is I just put a bunch of squares together on a page, and in my head, I have those representing the number of motifs we need to do for each size. So this darker rectangle right here is 6 squares deep and 11 squares in length, okay? So that would represent all of the squares you would need to do for the smallest numbered version of the piece, right? The next portion up, where it's kind of the middle blue color, That is 7 squares deep and 13 squares wide. And then the next portion is 8 squares deep and 15 squares wide. If you know that each one of these squares are 3.5 inches by 3.5 inches, it's just a matter of multiplication, right? So you would take the 11 times 3.5 and the 6 times 3.5, and that's where you would get those two numbers regarding the width of the piece and the length of the piece. Why am I pointing this out to you? Why is this important? If you are petite and you decide, you know what, this length of the piece is just a little bit too long for me, where if I take off 1 square and make it 5 squares deep, how does that affect my overall length of the piece? Or vice versa, maybe you're a little bit taller, but you're a smaller size. If you add 1 square in length and keep the width at 11, how is that going to change it? So I wanted you to be able to have this so you could play around with it. So having said that, you'll notice in the pattern there is an image where it's just the blank squares. There's nothing highlighted. And what I thought is this would be a great opportunity for you for filling in your own squares. How many wide do you plan on doing? How many deep do you, or length or deep do you plan on doing? Another thing you can think about doing is, because this wonderful yarn, Red Heart Unforgettable, as you're making the motifs, the colors are going to come out just a little bit different on each motif because of the natural way the yarn is dyed. If you're one of those big type A personalities that just cannot have 2 squares side by side that are the similar color, you could plot out how many squares wide and how many squares deep your cardigan is going to be. And then as you make your squares, like color in that square what the main color of that particular square is. Okay, so maybe it's that kind of like this one here. You kind of see how that gold color right there, it's just this, it's sort of like an anomaly of all this sea of blue and then there's gold. Well, you'll notice that Caitlin put the other gold one way up here in that corner. And that's because Caitlin is so type A. There's no way she's going to put both of those side by side. So if she had a chance to put together a square chart sort of like this, she could have planned out, okay, I'm doing 6 deep, 11 wide. I have a gold square I'm going to put it here. And I have another gold square I'm going to put it way over here. Do you see what I'm saying here? So it's just one of those ways that you could really kind of color code how your cardigan is going to turn out before you get too far along and maybe you did have 2 squares kind of side by side that you didn't plan on doing just because you were doing join as you go sort of like this. You could kind of plan them out. Does that make sense? Hopefully it does. Hopefully it's not too confusing. Is it absolutely necessary to do that? Heck no. You could do whatever you want with the pattern. You could have anything side by side. You don't have to do color things in. You don't have to make alterations. But I want you to know that I am here to help you make those alterations should you choose to. Okay, so hopefully I have not muddied the water more than it needs to be. And Caitlin did remind me to tell you that as we go along, I will show you where is a good time to make these changes should you choose to do them. I will show you how to make the change, what to think about as you're making these changes, and all of that good stuff. So that will happen along the way. All right, so there you go. Now's the time you've all been waiting for. I'm going to put on that cardigan so that way you can see how big it is as opposed to my body. So that way you can kind of think to yourself, okay, so that's what the largest size looks like on a large body, and you can decide if that's the size you really want to make or if you want to make something else. Now, I'm going to remind you again, this is not the actual cardigan, but it is the same measurements. It's one I did in knit, and I used the same measurements, and again, I love it. So hopefully you like it. So I'm going to hit pause here and do a little wardrobe change up. Okay, here we go. Okay, presto changeo. This is actually a cardigan that I did for my Creative Bug class. It's a knit cardigan, and I chose to do a version out of Unforgettable, and it is the same measurements as this crochet cardigan, and this is the 2X size. I'm going to stand up and show you. I know it is not motifs, but you can get an idea of what the sizing is. Now, as I mentioned, I'm a 53-inch bust. I'm a typical 2X, and you can see this is very large, okay? Very large. It comes down really deep. Can you see that? And I mean, it's a very, very big piece. Now, Do I like it this big? Heck yeah, I do, because I usually just wear this at the house, in the office, and I pin these closed, and it's just real comfortable. But you remember what I mentioned about having to have the width so that way your arms have movement? If I made it the size of just a small size without the collar here, I wouldn't have any movement space here. So I have lots of space to move, okay? Another thing that was pointed out to me is that let me put this, can I sit back down? Let me sit back down. The model in the pictures that you guys are looking at with the blue cardigan, she's about 5'7", and you can see where the cardigan hits her right about above her booty. I don't know what else to call it. Her bum. And if that's the style you want to go for, I think that's awesome. But if you wanted to make it a little bit longer, all you would do is, instead of doing the 6 squares deep, that's where you'd want to add the 7 squares deep, okay? Another option there is, if you decide maybe you want the collar to go all the way around the bottom of the cardigan, that is a whole nother option you could do, and that's where you could leave it at the 6 and go all the way around the bottom of the cardigan with the collar. Now, if you were to ask me, I wouldn't want to do that. One, because the collar takes a lot of time to do, and I don't want the collar piece down around my booty area. I'd prefer to have some really pretty squares down there. But again, that's a whole nother thing you could do if you choose to alter your piece. I keep mentioning Caitlin. You guys know Caitlin. She's one of the admins of the Facebook group, and she's also my social media manager. She's also one of Marley's minions. She's a contractor, and she's the one that made both of these samples. And Caitlin is a 5'7", wonderful size medium model herself, and she mentioned to me that if she were to make this for herself, she would also like to have it a little bit longer. So I'm going to throw that out there just so that way you know if you want some kind of input as far as sizing wise. So there you have it. Man, I really hope this video has been helpful and not confused you too much. Just know this is a video you can always come back to and reference as you're going along and making these motifs. That's the beauty of using the motifs to make your first cardigan, is there's a lot of wiggle room and there's a lot of minor adjustments you can make after you're even like almost done with the whole cardigan, and you can change it up and change the size. So it's a good first piece, first garment in my opinion. So that's why I chose it. Okay, now you know sizing, now you know about the measurements, now you know about how big the biggest size is, and the next step is to learn the actual motif and how to join as you go, because after today, that's what you're going to be working on literally for the next 3 weeks. I'll talk to you about some other things along the way, but you are going to be on a mission to make some motifs and get this fabric created so that way you can make the entire garment. Hopefully you're ready. Hopefully I haven't scared you. Don't forget to join the Facebook group, because there's a lot of wonderful helpers in there, including some wonderful admin and moderators who are there to answer questions, and it's just going to be a good time. All right, I'm going to take this off and I'm going to get started and do the video for the motifs. I hope you've enjoyed this. I'm Marley Bird. This is the crochet along for the Marley's Granny cardigan, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye guys.